Prince William did not speak when the judge read the final paragraph. He did not turn toward the lawyers, reach for the papers, or respond to the aide whispering beside him. He simply stared ahead, frozen by a revelation that dragged his mother's memory into the heart of the monarchy. The court had confirmed that Camilla concealed a collection of Diana's private letters, and one of them had been addressed directly to William. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Catherine reached for his sleeve, but William could not look at her. The High Court, the senior court that decides civil disputes, had confirmed that Queen Camilla knowingly kept 17 letters written by Diana, Princess of Wales, outside the royal archives. Those archives are the collection where the monarchy preserves historic correspondence. Several envelopes had been intended for William and Harry, which meant this was not merely a fight over ownership. It was a fight over whether two sons had been denied their mother's final voice. Camilla sat behind him, gripping the arm of her chair as the judge continued. She heard the court explain how the letters had surfaced during a legal dispute over materials moved from a restricted royal residence into a private household collection. That mattered, because anything removed from protected custody could escape normal checks and remain hidden from the people named inside it. She did not speak, yet her hands betrayed the pressure around her. A court clerk placed a sealed cream envelope on the evidence table. William saw his mother's handwriting before anyone read the words aloud. For William, when he is ready. The prince slowly pushed his chair back, but he did not stand. His hand settled beside the envelope, close enough to touch it, yet he remained frozen. Catherine stayed beside him, feeling the shock move through him, as if the court had returned Diana for one unbearable second, only to remind him how long her words had been kept away. The judgment delivered one final wound. A handwritten instruction had ordered the letters removed from the archive inventory before William could be told they existed. This was no filing error. Someone had made a choice, recorded it, and trusted silence to protect that choice forever. The court had revealed what Camilla had done, but not why she had done it. That answer, the judge noted, appeared to rest inside a private exchange between the Queen Consort and Charles. But before William could open Diana's letter, he had to face the three people whose choices had allowed it to remain hidden for years. The ruling named one act, but it exposed 4 private wounds. William had lost years he could never recover. Harry had been denied words that might have changed his understanding of the past. Charles now faced the possibility that silence inside his own marriage had protected a secret from his sons. And Camilla, surrounded by lawyers and palace officials, understood that the court had not merely questioned her judgment, it had placed her beside Diana's memory and demanded an explanation. William stayed beside the unopened envelope, fighting anger deeper than the ruling. He had guarded Diana's legacy from exploitation while carrying questions about her final days. Her memory was not merely history, it shaped the father, husband, and future king he had become. Now someone inside his family had decided when he was ready to hear from her, and that choice felt like theft. Harry called from abroad. The brothers spoke quietly, their tensions pushed aside by the same wound. He admitted that Diana's letters might force them to revisit memories they had understood differently, while William confessed that he feared discovering how much had been hidden. Neither man raised his voice. Yet both understood that 17 envelopes could reopen a childhood they had spent decades trying to survive. Charles entered a private consultation room and found his son standing alone. The crown, the authority and duties carried by the sovereign, now demanded that the king defend the monarchy's integrity, even if doing so exposed his marriage. A court exhibit showed that he had once been informed about sensitive personal correspondence, but the phrase concealed more than it explained. Had he known those papers belonged to Diana, or had Camilla allowed him to believe they were something else? Camilla answered through a documented legal statement filed with the court overnight. She claimed the letters had been withheld to prevent emotional harm and protect family stability. The Queen Consort framed her decision as protection, but William heard something colder: control. She had turned his mother's words into a risk to be managed, and Charles now had to decide whether that defense protected his wife or condemned her. The king looked at the envelope and began, "I did not know what it was." William raised one hand before he could continue. "Then you should have asked." His voice remained calm, which made the words cut deeper. After Charles left, the prince told his solicitor, a lawyer who advises and represents a client, that no one had the right to use Diana's letters as a tool of palace protection. That single sentence forced Charles to look backward, to the precise night when a private decision became a secret the palace could no longer control. The secret did not begin in a courtroom. It began 8 years earlier, after midnight, inside a locked archive room at Clarence House. A memorial exhibition about Diana was only days from being approved when an archivist discovered a box that had never appeared on any official register. Camilla arrived before Charles could be contacted. What happened during the next 20 minutes would later become the specific trigger behind the court case, and the point of no return for everyone involved. Eleanor Harcourt froze when she lifted the lid. The senior archivist had catalogued royal material for years, yet the cedar box carried no file number, transfer record, or signature. Inside rested 17 letters in Diana's handwriting. Several bore the names of William and Harry. Others referred to Charles, the prince's future duties, and the pressure palace life could place upon 2 grieving boys. Camilla entered before Eleanor could telephone Charles. The queen consort listened as the archivist explained that the discovery might enter an archive review linked to a memorial exhibition. An archive review is the process used to record and approve historic material before preservation or display. That mattered because once the letters were entered, their existence could no longer be controlled by one household. Eleanor watched unease harden across Camilla's face. Diana's words could revive comparisons the future queen had spent years trying to survive, while their release might reopen wounds between Charles and his sons. Camilla insisted he should not be disturbed until the contents were assessed. At that time, he was Prince of Wales, the title traditionally held by the monarch's direct heir, and she argued that sudden disclosure could destabilize the family and institution. The decisive moment came during a private planning meeting on 14 March 2018. Camilla opened William's envelope and read one line aloud: "Never allow the palace to teach you that silence is the same as loyalty." She closed the letter, pushed it into the box, and ordered Eleanor to remove the collection from the exhibition review. Eleanor refused to erase the truth completely. Camilla instructed her to replace the original entry with miscellaneous personal papers, ownership unresolved. The archivist obeyed on the official inventory, but hid her handwritten intake note inside a retired catalog file. "These cannot reach the princes like this," Camilla said. When Eleanor asked when they would be told, she answered, "When the danger has passed." Years later, Eleanor's duplicate note surfaced after her retirement. William's legal team used it to force the sealed collection into court. But the danger never passed. It only waited until William could stand in the same room as Camilla and demand to know who gave her the right to silence Diana. No aides were invited into the room. No lawyers were permitted to speak. William entered carrying the court judgment, while Camilla waited beside a cold fireplace with her hands locked together. Charles stood between them for only a few seconds before realizing that he could not mediate what was coming. This was not a dispute over royal property. It was a son confronting the woman who had decided that his dead mother's voice was too dangerous for him to hear. Charles had arranged the meeting at Clarence House before the ruling could grow into a wider constitutional crisis. A constitutional crisis is a conflict that threatens the normal balance of authority around the crown. That mattered because the king could not defend trust in the monarchy while ignoring evidence that his own household had hidden personal material from his sons. He needed Camilla to explain herself, but William had not come for comfort. William placed the altered inventory, Eleanor's original intake note, and Diana's sealed envelope on the table. The prince pushed the judgment toward Camilla and asked whether she had ever imagined him searching for answers his mother had already written. She had kept those answers inside private rooms, while he spent years protecting Diana's memory from strangers who wanted to use it. His voice stayed controlled, but every word carried grief. Camilla defended her decision with both hands still locked together. The queen consort said Diana's words were emotionally volatile and could have damaged William's relationship with Charles during a fragile royal transition. A royal transition is the period when duties and influence shift toward a future reign. She insisted that she had protected the family from another rupture, but William heard only the old palace instinct to manage pain by controlling who was allowed to speak. The pressure finally broke her defense. Camilla admitted, through the recorded conversation preserved by Charles's private secretary outside the room, that she had opened 4 envelopes, including William's. She claimed she needed to understand the danger they posed. Charles turned toward her in disbelief. Until that moment, he had believed the papers were disputed archive material. He had not known she had personally read Diana's words. William did not raise his voice. "You protected the version of the family that required my mother to remain silent." Then he demanded every original letter, every copy, and every private note Camilla had created. If she refused, he would seek the formal removal of her archive privileges. William's anger had finally broken the private silence, but the next decision would not belong to him alone. It would belong to the people who controlled the crown's records, residences, and legal authority. By sunrise, the confrontation had moved beyond a family argument. The keeper of the royal archives, the Lord Chamberlain, crown solicitors, and Princess Anne assembled to determine whether Camilla could still be trusted with restricted historical material. Yet the most decisive person in the room was not a judge or a constitutional officer. It was Charles, sitting at the head of the table, staring at the written record of a secret preserved inside his own household. Charles understood that every person around him was waiting for a choice. The royal archives, the protected collection holding the monarchy's historic papers, operated under the sovereign's authority, but access could be restricted through a joint administrative order. That meant the keeper, crown legal advisors, and the king could close the door together. For Camilla, losing access would not be symbolic. It would remove her from private collections tied to earlier monarchs, royal spouses, and family correspondence. Anne broke the silence first. Princess Anne reminded her brother that Diana's letters had never been Camilla's burden to manage. She spoke without anger, which made the warning harder to dismiss. Charles could protect his wife, but doing so would tell William that marriage mattered more than his mother's words. It would also damage faith in the historical record, because archives survive only when private power cannot quietly rewrite what belongs there. The keeper placed a second concealed file before Charles. The document was a private summary written by Camilla after she read the letters, categorizing several passages as harmful to future crown unity. Crown unity meant the appearance that the royal family remained stable behind the sovereign. Yet one entry went further. It recommended monitoring William's public references to Diana and limiting his involvement in memorial decisions until the letter's influence could be assessed. Charles removed his glasses and read the final page twice. Anne watched him set down his pen, while the Lord Chamberlain waited without speaking. The Lord Chamberlain is the senior official who helps manage the sovereign's household and ceremonial duties. That role mattered now because any restriction had to be enforced inside royal residences, not merely written on paper. The king finally signed. He temporarily suspended Camilla's access to all private royal archives and ordered an independent search of her household storage. Nobody in the room mistook it for mercy. Anne said nothing, but her stillness showed she understood what the signature meant. Charles had chosen accountability, yet he had also closed doors his wife once entered without question. The order took less than a minute to sign, yet by the time Camilla received it, the life she understood inside the palace had already begun to contract around her. Camilla received the order in the room where the letters had been stored. A senior courtier read the restrictions aloud while 2 archive officers waited outside the open door. She was no longer permitted to remove, review, or privately retain historical correspondence. Every locked cabinet connected to Diana's papers would be examined. For the first time since becoming queen, Camilla was not being asked to cooperate as a royal partner. She was being instructed to surrender control as the subject of an investigation. Camilla listened without interrupting as the officers entered. They sealed 3 cabinets at Clarence House, removed document boxes for inspection, and recorded every object connected to the disputed correspondence. An inventory is a formal list of items created so nothing can be removed or replaced unnoticed. That mattered because the court now needed proof that Diana's papers had not been altered again, while William needed confidence that no final message could disappear twice. The Queen watched a numbered seal stretch across a cabinet she had used for years. Her expression changed when the senior courtier confirmed that Charles had authorized the search without warning her. Camilla reached toward the handle, then stopped before touching it. Behind her, the door closed softly as officers carried Diana's letters away in protective cases, leaving her completely alone with the silence she had once defended before the truth surfaced. Charles refused to enter that silence with her. When Camilla requested an immediate meeting, the king sent word through his private secretary that he would speak only after the inventory was complete. Her own secretary was temporarily removed from archive duties, while staff were ordered to preserve messages, handwritten notes, and access logs. For the monarch, this was no longer about offering comfort to his wife. It was about proving that royal authority could investigate itself. One discovery changed the search. An officer found an empty divider marked W, private, suggesting an 18th letter had existed beyond the 17 presented in court. Fresh dust lines and a newly replaced ribbon showed that the envelope had been handled within the previous 6 months, long after Camilla claimed she had stopped reviewing Diana's correspondence. William received the next finding through a documented report from the archive team. A handwritten delivery note indicated that the missing letter had been taken to a private room used by Charles. The prince read the line twice, then set the report down. Camilla's secrecy had wounded him, but the possibility of his father's involvement threatened something deeper. The discovery of the empty divider threatened to destroy the fragile trust that remained. Until William chose to speak with his father without lawyers, courtiers, or Camilla between them. William found Charles in a private sitting room, with the missing envelope resting on the table between them. There were no officials in the room, and no prepared statements waiting to shape the conversation. The king looked older than he had in court. He admitted that Camilla brought him the letter 6 months earlier, warning that its contents could permanently divide father and son. Charles had read only the first page. Then he had locked it away, unable to destroy it, or surrender it. William did not sit. The prince stared at the envelope, while his father explained that Camilla had transferred it after fearing the archive review would expose the entire collection. An archive review is the formal process used to examine, record, and protect historical papers. That mattered because once the missing letter entered that process, neither private fear nor royal rank could keep it hidden from its intended recipient. Charles admitted through their private, unrecorded conversation that fear had stopped him returning it. Diana had written about William's future relationship with his father, urging him to separate personal love from unquestioning obedience to the institution. The king believed those words might confirm his son's darkest suspicions about the past and destroy what remained between them. He had chosen delay, hoping silence could prevent another wound. William finally looked at him. He did not shout. He asked why his father had trusted fear more than him. Charles opened his mouth, then stopped. The silence carried every lost year, every controlled statement, and every moment when duty had replaced honesty. For the future king, the betrayal mattered, because his own father had repeated Camilla's mistake, deciding what pain he was allowed to face. Charles slid the envelope across the table with both hands. He confessed that he had stopped reading halfway through the letter and never reached its ending. William broke the seal and continued where his father had failed. Diana's final paragraph did not ask her son to abandon Charles. She urged him to demand truth, resist blind obedience, and still leave room for reconciliation when anger made distance feel safer. William folded the letter carefully. She was not trying to take me away from you. She was trying to make us tell the truth. Charles lowered his head, and the monarch finally understood that the words he feared had offered mercy. The decision came quietly. William said reconciliation required public accountability, and Charles agreed the judgment would be acknowledged and every letter returned to its rightful recipient. That truth left the private room with them, and within hours, the palace gates became the center of a public reckoning no royal statement could soften. By the next morning, one image defined the crisis. William leaving court with Diana's envelope held against his chest. Newspapers placed the photograph above a single devastating headline: the letters he was never meant to see. Outside Kensington Palace, People gathered beneath the gates carrying white roses and handwritten messages. Inside the royal household, televisions remained on without sound, as staff watched public sympathy move decisively toward Diana's sons. Buckingham Palace responded before noon. Charles approved a formal statement acknowledging the judgment, confirming that every letter would be returned, and announcing an independent review of private archive access. An independent review is an examination led outside the immediate household, so family loyalty cannot shape the result. That mattered, because the monarchy had to prove that royal rank could not decide who owned another person's grief. William watched the coverage from Kensington Palace with growing unease. The prince understood the support, but he also saw Diana's pain becoming public spectacle again. One broadcaster framed the crisis as a battle between emotional guardianship and personal ownership, asking whether any royal spouse could withhold a mother's words from her children. He lowered the volume, yet the question remained louder than the television. Camilla faced the same broadcast from Clarence House. The Queen Consort watched crowds place flowers beneath photographs of Diana, removed her glasses, and turned away. She cancelled every scheduled appearance through a written instruction issued by her private secretary. The silence around her was no longer protective. It was isolating, and she knew the public had placed her beside a memory she could never defeat. The Daily Chronicle captured the mood with one front page. It showed William clutching the envelope beside an inset image of Diana writing at a desk. Beneath the headline, "A Mother's Voice, Locked Away for 8 Years." At the palace gates, a young girl placed a folded note among the roses. A mother's words belonged to her children. William saw the message during a news report and quietly left the room before it ended. Harry then broke his silence through a recorded statement released by his spokesperson. He confirmed receiving his own letters and said private grief could not be managed by those who feared what honesty might reveal. His words publicly aligned him with William, turning two wounded brothers into a united moral force. Charles understood that a general apology would fail. The king prepared to name the wrongdoing, define Camilla's consequences, and restore Diana's letters permanently to her sons. Nothing less could repair the damage now. Public sympathy had delivered its judgment, but the final verdict still had to come from the family, whose silence allowed the letters to disappear. The final meeting was held without cameras, but its outcome was made public in language the palace could not dilute. Charles acknowledged that Diana's letters had been wrongfully withheld from William and Harry. Camilla accepted responsibility for reading, removing, and retaining correspondence that was never hers to control. Her access to private royal archives was permanently revoked. Yet the deepest consequence was not written in the order. It was the recognition that protection without consent had become another form of betrayal. Charles signed a binding royal archive directive before the family left. A directive is a formal order carrying the monarch's authority. It permanently removed Camilla's independent access to family correspondence and required 2 authorized people to approve future handling of personal papers. That mattered, because no single person could again hide a letter, alter an inventory, or decide who was ready to receive the truth. William watched every envelope pass into legal custody. The Prince and Harry became the recognized owners of Diana's complete collection, while copies held inside royal residences were destroyed under independent supervision. Sealed records preserved only the chain of custody, the documented history showing where each item had been kept, and the findings of the court. Their mother's words would remain private, but the wrongdoing surrounding them could never be erased. Camilla then asked to speak with William alone. The Queen Consort offered no defense and blamed no advisor. Through their private documented meeting, she admitted that fear of Diana's lasting influence had led her to confuse protecting the monarchy with controlling another woman's voice. William did not offer immediate forgiveness. He accepted the apology as an acknowledgement of truth, then told her that reconciliation would depend upon conduct, not title, ceremony, or carefully chosen words. The letters changed everything once William read them together. Diana had not urged him to reject the institution or abandon Charles. She had asked her son to lead without surrendering empathy, memory, or moral independence. The king accepted that verdict and authorized William to determine how her papers would be preserved for the family. Father and son agreed that her memory would never again be treated as a threat inside the palace. William later placed the letters inside a new cedar box. He kept the envelope marked, "For William," beside him, touched the handwriting once, and whispered, "You came back." The court had exposed a secret, but Diana's own words delivered the lasting verdict. The monarchy could preserve its future only by returning the truth to those from whom it had been taken. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.